So first of all, I'm going to show you a couple of little tools that you can use to help speed up what you're doing. And you notice here that I've just clicked on cell A1. I will call that a cell and I'll refer to it as A1. And here is cell G2 and here is cell F20. So I'm going to start in cell A1 and that will be my cell that I used as a label cell. And I'll call it time in hours. And my time is going to be going up in ones, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. But I want it to go up to 20. But I don't want to have to write the numbers 1 to 20. So here's my first tip. Start with the number 1. And in the second cell, use a formula. Now a formula will always start with an equals. Then I'm going to do the previous cell, which was A2, plus 1. And that will give me 2. So it's saying whatever's in A2 plus 1 is what's going to go in A3. And I get 2. And then I'm going to get this and drag it down. You'll see that I've got a little box in the corner there. If I click on that little box, I'll get a cross. I can drag it down as far as I want. And now I have the numbers from 1 to 20. I also might want to have this going up not just in ones, I might want to have it going up in 0.1s. So perhaps I'm going to start at 10 and I'll move up in 0.1s. Notice how it automatically corrects when I change the first cell. So if I want to go up in 0.1s, I'll just change this 1 to 0.1. And then I'll go here again and just copy that formula down. And there it is. So I can go up in 0.1s, in 1s, in 0.01s, in 0.5s, in any number I want. In the second column, we'll create a second variable. This time it will be cost in dollars for some unknown context. And I'm going to magically create some data now. And there's my data. Now let's imagine that you wanted to use formulas to find some other values from this data. There's no use getting your calculator now to do averages and sums and other such formula. You can simply use Excel to do pretty much anything that your calculator can do. So first of all, let's imagine I wanted to sum these numbers up. I just use the formula sum. So I type equals sum. I select, so I open a bracket, then I select these cells. I close the bracket and it will add them up for me. Or I might go equals average. Again, I select those cells, I close the bracket and it will average it for me. Excel can do all of those things for you. Let's imagine I wanted to find the maximum value in this list. Now if I click on this little FX insert function up the top here, it will give me every function that there is. And there's some functions I've used recently in my searches. So let's imagine I wanted to find the maximum. So in this brief description I type in maximum, press enter, and it will now tell me that one here, number rate X, that doesn't make much sense to me. Product, I don't want to multiply them together. Max, I wonder what that is. Returns the largest value in a set of values. That's what I want. So I'm now going to use the maximum function. And I want my numbers to be these numbers here. And this should return my maximum number. And there it is, 55. And I can see that's my maximum number. So whatever it is that you want to do, Excel can probably do it. Search for it. Google search for it. Someone will know how to do it and be able to help you set up your Excel formula. We'd also like you to be formatting your cells as well as possible. So I'm going to show you now how you might be able to format your cells to make it look a little bit neater so that it makes a little bit more sense to us. So first of all, if you highlight the whole lot, up the top here you'll notice there's some tools. I can border all my boxes, there's a border around all of them, and I can do a really dark border around one particular set of boxes, such as my titles. I can bold those titles, that's nice, and I can also highlight the whole lot and center them. If I've got taller columns, I could also center them vertically. What if my title was too long and I wanted to make it neater? Let's say, for example, that this cost is actually cost of shares on the Australian stock market. Now you'll see that when I click enter there, this goes right across 2, 3, 4 columns. I could pull this out and make it really wide so it fits, but now my table doesn't look very nice. So what I can do instead is if I make it a bit thinner, so let's say about half the width, and click on that cell, B1, I can wrap text. Lastly, I'm going to speak to you about setting up a graph in Excel, and this seems to be the main point of issue that students will have when developing work for their assignments. Of course, this is mathematics, and it does need to be really accurate. Your graphs need to be showing what you're trying to show without any redundancies. So first of all, I'm going to show you one of the major issues we have. Most students will highlight the numbers, click on Insert, and then choose their chart that they'd like. Now I'm going to do a bar chart, very simple and quick. Bar chart, I now have an issue. As you can see, my bar chart has come up with two sets of columns. It's not come up with time as my X horizontal axis and cost as my vertical axis as I would expect. So I need to change this now. And there's a few different ways you can do this. First of all, while I've got my chart selected, you'll notice that there's chart tools at the top. These chart tools give you everything you need to do. So I'm just going to go along this chart tools to select data. It'll bring up this data box. It's currently saying that I have time and cost as my x-axis values. I don't want that to be the case. I want cost to remain as one of my bars, but not time. And I want my horizontal axes, labels, to actually be these time values. So I'm going to select those. And now you can see my labels have matched up with my bars as I would like. I click OK. Now at the moment I've got this legend down here which is saying that the orange bars are my cost. But it's on the x-axis, so it's quite poorly labelled, I'd say. So I'm going to delete that legend. And instead what I'm going to do is click up the top here. I'm in Chart Tools, Design, and I'm going to add a chart element. I can add an axis title. So my primary horizontal title will now be time. And then I'm going to add a vertical title. Cost of a stock on the Australian share market. In dollars, don't forget your units. So now I've got a graph that looks a little bit neater and it's labelled a little bit better. I can also double click on the title and change that. And I might change it to cost in dollars of shares, or whatever it is that you decide is enough detail for you. There are a lot of other things you can do. Changing colours, for example, adding other chart elements including data labels, different grid lines if you'd like to. You can change the chart type, you can move the chart within the box, and you can do different formatting with your chart in terms of putting boxes, text boxes on, etc. Have a play around with that. You'll also know that there are some performers. Let me give you some tips on what not to use. This first one is fine. It's not about having a fancy graph that takes away from the data you're trying to show. The second one, on the other hand, it still works appropriately, but it's probably not necessary to have the data labels on there, otherwise we may as well just be looking at the table. The third one's fine, maybe a little bit nicer. Just change how the bars look. I quite like that. Any shadowing, completely unnecessary, and that detracts from the labels. And the same goes for this last one here. Black background really does detract from what you're trying to show. Keep your graph nice and simple. This one has grid lines in it. I actually think they look quite nice and neat. Maybe something you'll decide to use. And these ones here I think are also quite nice and neat. If I click on this little arrow here, there'll be some more suggestions, and I can show them all at once. So feel free to choose these, just make sure that they're appropriate and they make sense for what you're trying to show. They're not overcomplicated, they don't detract from the data that's being shown.